So now we begin with graph traversals. So there are two techniques of graph traversals, and the first one is breadth first search. And the basic algorithm of breadth first search is right here. We're going to begin from the root and find all the neighbors. Once we find these neighbors, for each of these neighbors, for each of these nodes, for each of these neighbors, we are going to explain their neighbors in turn. We are going to continue this until unless we have visited all the nodes. So I guess this can be understood in a better way by an example. So for that I have taken one graph right here. This is going to be our graph which is seen right here, and our root is going to be G. So basically G is our root. So as mentioned over here, that we have to begin from root and find the neighbors of this particular root. So first we take root G, and then find the neighbors of root G. Which are the neighbors? Let's mention its neighbors. So we are going to take root G first and we are going to find the neighbors. So first we'll do the printing job. First we'll take root G and we'll print it to the list. Once we have printed this to the list, the next step is basically, once we begin with root, we have to find the neighbors of that particular root. So here we go and find the neighbors. Find neighbors of G. So which are the neighbors of G? Over here in graph, if we notice that A, D and F are the neighbors. So write G right here because we have already visited G. Once we have visited G, so just mention G. After that, we have visited G, we have found the neighbors of G, which is nothing but A, D and F. So now it's time to visit the neighbors of G, all the neighbors. So first let's go to A, visit A right over here, print it. Then once the visiting part of A is done, come to another neighbor called D, visit him, mention him out here. Then go to the another neighbor of G, which is nothing but F, visit F and write F right here. So we have now visited all the neighbors of G, that is nothing but a root. Now in the next step, what we need to do is, for each node explore their neighbors. For each node explore their neighbors. So we explored the neighbors of G. We explored the neighbors of G. But after that, we still haven't explored the neighbors of A, D and F. So we'll begin from A because we have printed A first in the list after G, whose all neighbors are visited. After that, we have printed A. So we'll be considering A first. So take first neighbor of G, which is nothing but, as considered, we have considered it to be A. So take first neighbor of G, which is nothing but A, as mentioned right here. So we'll consider that first, and after that come over here to A, and explore the neighbors of A. What are the neighbors of A? What are the neighbors of A? So the neighbors of A over here are basically the root node G, then D and then B. Among this G is already visited, so we don't have to consider it. Then D is also already visited, so we don't have to consider it. So the only one that is left is B. So we are going to consider the neighbor B, and we are going to also visit that neighbor. So now all the neighbors of A are done. All the neighbors of A are done. So all the neighbors of A are done. After that, consider the second neighbor. If any, if there is a second neighbor of G, once A is done, go to the next node which is there, which is the second neighbor of root node D. So take the second node, second neighbor of G, that is nothing but D. So take node D, which is after A in the list. So take this node, take it as D, and then explore the neighbors of D. So let's explore the neighbors of D right here. So we are now over here on D. Neighbors of D are nothing but G and A. So let's mention it out here, G and A. But if you notice, G is already printed, it's already visited. So, and A is also already printed, already visited. So we don't have to consider anything. So our list after visiting D and exploring the neighbors of D will remain to be the same. After this, which is the next one in the list? Which is the next node in the list after D? The next node in the list is F. The next node in the list is F. So we are going to consider F now. So take F and now explore the neighbors of F. So here is our F. The neighbors of F are basically G, E and C. So let's mention them out here. It's G, E and C. So let's see this. G is already visited, so this is done, we don't have to consider it. E not visited, so we have to consider it. C not visited, so we have to consider it. So let's take them into assumption and put them right here, E and C, and let's visit them, print them one by one. So after this, if you notice, all the nodes are visited, G, A, D, F, B, E, C. So basically all the nodes G, A, D, F, B, E and C are visited. So with this, as mentioned in our steps, continue step 2 until all nodes are visited, and we have visited all the nodes, so we need to stop. So our last list is nothing but this one. Now if suppose any node was not visited, then in that case we would have to go further. Means what? We explore over here till F. So if any node was remaining to be visited, we would continue with B. We would have taken B over here, take B, explore the neighbors of B, and if anything is remaining, if we find anything, we'll put over here and add it to the print list. And still if anything would remain, then after B we would take E, explore the neighbors of E, print if anything is remaining, we would mention over here, and then print if anything required. So we go in a sequence, basically okay. So one after another. First we explore the root node, then one by one we start exploring the neighboring nodes which are there in the order that we have mentioned, and apart from that, it is always not necessary to follow a particular order. Like I took the root node as G, I could have mentioned over here ulta also, like F, D and A could be mentioned also. It could be ulta also, we could have mentioned this upside down also, and there wouldn't be a problem. Just that while adding over here, it would be G, F, D, A, and then the first neighbor, we would have considered F as over here, we would have considered first neighbor of G as F instead of A. So it's not required to follow a particular order, you all can have your own order. So everyone's breadth first traversal would be basically different because we can consider any particular order of the neighbors of a particular node, whether the root node or any other node. So please take this into consideration, and remember, your list can be different because it depends on how you consider the neighbors, how you consider the nodes. Do remember that. This is for your breadth first traversal.